Welcome to the TNF podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, give us a follow, give us a rating. That would be most excellent. All right, we've got some upcoming shows. On the 27th of April at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Donnie Polinsky, the DRP is his hip-hop name. He was the vocalist for Primer 55. He works for Force 5 Records, and he also worked for Suburban Noise Records. If you remember Cottonmouth Kings, I'm sure you 420ers know that. Let's see here. On the 4th of April at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Gina Marie Campbell from Scarhead and Revival. And we're taking a break for Mother's Day. Go spend some time with your mom. And then on the 18th, this one is kind of tentative. We're not sure whether or not this is going to be in studio because they're actually coming here to play. And I'm really stoked to be able to see them. World of Chaos, and if you've heard of them, they're all young kids. They play like No Warning, Madball covers, and they've got some really awesome original material that I got to hear. So working on either being an in-person interview, but if not, it's going to be on the 18th of May at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And I have an official merchandising company, Hell's Heart Merch Co. Go to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use code 20 for 20% off of your entire order. They're fine Bella Canvas Next Level Tri-Blend t-shirts. They feel amazing. If you like movies, if you like hardcore, I think you'll really be into them. All right, so my next guest today, I've been having a lot of Renaissance women on this show, a lot of really just multifaceted, awesome ladies. She's part of the Sisterhood group, which I've had a few of those ladies on the show before. They're all awesome. She's a psychologist. She's a pilot, and she kicked the shit out of cancer, which is a real inspiring story to me. So I think we're going to be in for a real excellent show here. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Dr. Monica Tanner.
Hey there.
Thanks for being here, Dr. Tanner.
Yes, I appreciate you. Monica's grand. That's no
Monica.
Proper,
okay.
No proper here. I love it.
Well, I'd call you Empress of the Known Universe if that was your title, which if you know the reference to that, you'd be awesome.
Much appreciated.
You do?
Yeah, maybe we should just do that. Let's go from there on.
Okay. So Empress of the Known Universe, Monica Tanner. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I think you know this. I was sick for a bit, but I'm finally on the mend and over the hump of wanting to die, to be frank with you. So I'm feeling much better today, thankfully.
That's great. Yeah, I really can't stand being sick. I don't get sick very often, but when I do, it really kind of knocks me out. So yes. I'm glad that you're doing better. Do you have any sort of remedies that you utilize whenever you're trying to overcome sickness?
Ginger. It's like my favorite thing in the whole world. So I just pound ginger tea and ginger lozenges and really try to get a lot of sleep. But it's the secret sauce to anything we do in life.
Ginger. I love it. Yeah. Ginger, turmeric. I know that like you can make like a ginger lemon tea and fantastic. Honey. Or you're vegan, so you probably do like agave, yeah?
Yeah. Not so much honey anymore, but yeah, I do love. Sometimes I'll just chew on straight ginger because it kind of wakes you up a bit too. So it's a bit of a punch in your mouth, but makes you feel better pretty quickly.
Ginger chews, yeah, those are the best. So you are a straight edger, which, you know, today is 420, which I always found it ironic that there was going to be a straight edger on the show on 420, but it's pretty perfect for this show. So you are involved in hardcore and music tangentially. What was your earliest memory of music in your household? What sort of things were playing on the radio or records-wise? And do you play any instruments? Did you play like in a high school band or anything like that? And then what's your earliest like memory of your first hardcore, or not hardcore, your first non-metal and non-hardcore show?
Yeah, wow, lots of good questions. You have to remind me if I forget any of these things because my memory is so poor. But I would say growing up, my parents were very non-traditional. So I was raised on Sex Pistols and Depeche Mode and really truly a lot of good old punk rock music because both my parents really loved that. So, my first memories were those type of songs and just bands being played in the house all the time. And my father, who was a horrible singer, would always try to just belt it out while we were little. So I definitely got my singing voice from him. So don't ask me to ever sing, but yeah, so that was my earliest memories of just music overall. And really knowing, I can pick whatever music I like, and they'll be super supportive. They were very like, we're not listening to any traditional music around here. Let's pump it up. Let's get some good stuff going. So that's my earliest memories of music and really being influenced in my household. I would say, gosh, trying to think of like instruments. Yes, I play the guitar, I play the piano, not very fluently. I would probably need to pick up my guitar that's sitting in the corner of my room right now and play it a bit, but I did not play in school. My parents really wanted me to do like debate and then also a lot of sports. So I played a ton of sports, which good and bad. I don't know if I was a pro at either of those things, but yeah, I wish I played more musical instruments growing up because I probably would be a bit more fluent and better at it than I am now. Oh, I think you asked me what was my first concert that I can remember outside of like a hardcore genre. I went to the Bush show when I was, gosh, I think in fifth grade with
Oh,
my
wow.
parents. And so I do have a fine love for Bush and Gavin Rosdale just because that was one of my first memories of ever being at a show and, hearing people. So quite different than I guess what I grew up in and what I was used to or what I listen to now. So yeah, a little bit different, but they were awesome. So it really burned in my memory.
Was that the Razor Blade Suitcase tour?
Yes. So
Okay.
yes. So yes, I remember all the goods. I can't remember the other bands that played for some reason. My memory's so poor, but I do remember Bush very vividly.
Okay. All right. Yeah, 90s had some awesome music, and there's a lot of people that are into hardcore and metal at present that kind of grew up with a lot of that, myself being one of them. Huge fan of Rage Against the Machine. Do
Yeah.
like me some Alice in Chains. Like there was some really awesome groups that were coming out of that era. So yeah, Bush. I was never particularly like that turned on by Bush, but I appreciate them for
Yeah.
they were definitely heavy, like they definitely had like an edge to them, so I mean that's pretty cool that you got to experience that. Garbage was another one that I got to see that
Yes.
was excellent. Like Shirley Manson has such an amazing stage
His
presence, and
voice.
they kind of killed it. Yeah. And so, with that, you said that you had Sex Pistols and Depeche Mode, which is pretty awesome. Like I think the closest thing my parents ever got to that was like maybe U2 and like NXS and stuff. So that was like the cool
Chess
stuff
is
that I like to
awesome
hear.
too. Yeah, we used to
Yeah,
listen to
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. That was probably the closest thing I would say that you kind of got to like punk and new wave in my house. So how
Yeah.
did you kind of seg into like actual hardcore? Like, what was your first introduction to that? And then what was your first show? Did you have like a friend that kind of turned you on to it, or did you just discover it on your own?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Detroit growing up. That's where my parents, were raised outside of the Middle East. And so there's a lot of music, right, coming out of Detroit in multiple facets. But my mom was basically straight edge before straight edge was a thing. So she was super prominent on not using any substance. And so quite opposite from my dad's family. My dad's family, were quite the wild. I'm sure they're having a good time here on 420. But my mom's side of the family was not, and so she really raised me to listen to that type of music, which would, stand up for yourself and really learn how to live a substance-free life. And I didn't become straight edge until I was 21. So I am in my 20th year. Oh my goodness, I'm aging myself of being straight edge. But going to those type of shows and really listening to it, my cousins were really big on not using substance. So my first show, which you will always find me at again still if they're in town, it was Earth Crisis. And so really, gosh, I just love them. And so that was my first kind of segue into seeing multiple people that were straight edge, and then vegan straight edge on top of that. And so just really seeing that camaraderie and community at a younger age. Gosh, don't tell the boys, but I'm probably aging them more than myself. So, really getting to see them and really having a good time. So that was my first like segue into it, and then going, hey, I think I'm like you guys. I wanna know more. Let me in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you can find some kindred spirits that are kind of on the same path than you, that's great. Carl has actually been on this show, and Dennis is going to be on this show in a few weeks. So the
Okay.
Earth Crisis guys are awesome. That
Yeah.
great band, definitely. And it's funny too because as I will typically have people that are in bands on the show, I
Yeah.
can just kind of take from whatever their live performances are, and I'm like, well, she's straight edge. I don't know, maybe she would like Earth Crisis as an intro, and sure enough, like that was your first show, so I dialed in. I dialed into it. That's great. That's great.
Perfect.
And so you got involved in straight edge because of you said your mom's side of the family. Were you able, aside from the bands, were you able to find like a close knit community of straight edgers in the Detroit area?
Yeah, growing up, there was a lot of scene and a lot of crews that were coming out of Detroit, right? So I think we know all of them, right? They're still either active or not so active nowadays. So, there was a lot of crews coming out of Detroit. So Detroit's known for the rough and tumble, right? And we like a little bit of grit. So I would always see a lot of the straight edge people in fights at shows and just pummeling people from crews. And I was like, all right, okay, so I'm going to have to fight if I'm around people. And being a more petite woman, it was okay, but I kind of tried to stay away from it a bit because, I didn't want to have to explain to my parents why I was getting in fights all the time at shows, which they probably would have loved if I'm being honest, because they both were very like, let's fight, you don't let anybody disrespect you. So I was really lucky in that regard. So yeah, I found a little bit of a crew, a couple of people that I still talk to this day out of Michigan, not so much Detroit, because a lot of them fell off the straight edge wagon. RIP to them, they're on the ground there. But I think a lot of people from Michigan that I knew and saw going to shows, and then obviously California, Southern California has a pretty good um, group of humans that are still straight edge to this day.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Detroit as far as like their straight edge scene, that they had a lot of pockets of it here and there. And you talk about the grit of Detroit, like Cold as Life. Love that band, amazing. I think
Yeah.
they're easily one of the best like hardcore bands. Born to Land Hard, killer, killer,
So
killer album.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Um, with your career, you are a psychologist, which I think is pretty cool because I've actually had some psychotherapists on the show before, which is a really fascinating career trajectory. And one of the few classes that I actually enjoyed in college that I had to take as an elective, I was like, I'll take Psych 101 and loved the class. It was like in an amphitheater setting, and the teacher was really cool. And I just really learned a lot. I don't know if I remembered a lot of it, but it was really fascinating to me. So, what kind of inspired you to go along that career path?
You know, I say this is my second career, and I always am hesitant when I tell people that I was in law enforcement before I became a doctor, and so I'm recovering, I
No
promise.
way.
Yeah, I was not it was not a move. But my father was military, so he really wanted me to either join military or go into some type of law enforcement. And I picked the later because I really don't like being told what to do, which I think is funny that I would go into that. But I was the renegade. I never gave tickets. I never did anything. They hated me around because I was always just like trying to educate people on being better humans. And so I'm recovering, I promise, no longer that fun stuff. But while I was there, I really could not understand why people do what they do. Like, it was just baffling to me. And, obviously coming from the straight edge side of things, I wanted to know, like, why are people dependent on substances and why are we here? Why are you self medicating? And it was a lot of talking, going through it. So I got to go back to school, and I got my doctorate in clinical and then organizational psychology. So they call me a dual doctor, and then really the foundations in neurology. So really studying the brain, right? What kind of brain patterns happen when we get excited? What kind of brain patterns happen when people use drugs? Or when there's certain moments in their life where there's a big spike, or if there's a really big lull. So it was really cool to get back into that, and it's really helped me just to understand myself a bit better, but really how I talk to people and how I empathize and help them become better people, because at the end of the day, right, we're all suffering and holding a bag, as I call it, one way or another. And I think it's really important, especially now more than ever, to understand why people are doing what they're doing, and how we can help them if they want help, because some people don't want help too.
Yeah, that's true. And let's rewind a little bit, because I actually didn't know this about you, that you were in law enforcement. And you could actually take some sort of practical application with psychology, because I know a lot of law enforcement officers are supposed to be trained in de
Yes.
escalation, and that kind of takes a psychological component, an aspect to it. And so, were you a law enforcement officer in Detroit, in the Detroit
No,
area?
no,
No?
in
Okay. Let's just
Fresno
say.
area, which I think might but just be as worse, if I'm being honest with you, Central California. So, um, yeah, no, I would say that was part of my reason to just get out. There was no real training, and the people that were trained, there's a thin line, right, between what the people are and what they're representing. And I think I was one of the few women that were there, so it was pretty hard to deal with that all the time. So yes, well, I could pull myself to it and talk to a person and have a great conversation. A lot of my colleagues could not get it together to do it.
Yeah. It's definitely not a career for everybody. There's
Oh,
a lot of people, I think, that go into it with virtuous intentions, and then there are some people that don't. Much
right.
like anywhere else in life, But did you ever have any like real close calls with that?
Yeah, I think a couple of my friends will laugh because they probably heard the story too many times, but I did have a what I call a career ender with a guy on PCP. And so I stole my eye socket, still cracked to this day. He got me good, really tall dude. He was huge, and I had to use my gun and ended up doing some things that as a human I was a bit shell shocked with, and then having a partner thankfully save me, and just made me really rethink life. Like, okay, this
Yeah,
is what the heck am I doing? I'm not helping anybody like I want to help, and it's time to go back to school and get out of this crap.
yeah, that
Oh,
makes sense. It can. I've met a lot of people in law enforcement, paramilitary. I was in the military, so it can be very stressful, and sometimes that's just not the career path that you're supposed to go on in life. And so
right.
you went into psychology. What do you think the biggest challenge of being a working in the psychological field is?
I think I have to try to turn it off sometimes when I'm talking to people, because I see a lot of the flags of certain diagnoses, and I have to try to, like, especially if I'm not at work, try to step out of it and just be like, okay, it's just a human, it's just a person, like, don't try to read them or try to understand where they're coming from. And I think
Mhm.
that's a challenge, but at the same time, it's really kept me on my toes because it helps me see people maybe for what they are sometimes when they're trying to hide it from other people. I think we see that often, especially now when everybody's so great and so amazing and so wonderful, and you have to try to keep up the appearance that you are as well. And so I would say turning it off is a lot harder than I think I thought it would be. But it also really does help me when I'm in situations that, don't feel well, or trying to understand people on different levels or maybe more positive levels. So, yeah, I think it's a challenge, and right now is so wild with our landscape that I'm seeing things that I've only read about in books. So, that's it's quite interesting to me to see, some of the stuff I learned in school being played out, not only in our government, but just from the supporting of the government, etc.
What do you sort of do to decompress from all that? I noticed that you are on Instagram and you're always going hiking, which was a big one for me when I was out west. I loved going up to the Griffith Observatory. I used to hike there all the time, and I loved just being able to go out and be in nature. So that would probably be one of them. What else do you like to do in order to kind of get away from all the madness of if of your career path?
Yeah, I think that's it, right? I love to run. I'm an outdoor runner, so it's been really great to hit the trails. Now that I'm back home in Los Angeles, I try to run when I'm feeling well. I run quite often. I run 5 to 7 days a week. So it's something that really helps. Working out is huge for me. And I know you said it earlier, even just being a cancer survivor, it's something that, especially as we age, working out is so good for us. So it really helps your mind on so many levels. As a doctor that has seen the brain pattern waves, what happen when you are running and working out, when things are moving forward on a normal brain, right? Because not everybody has a normal brain. That's just reality. You get to see those spikes, and those really help. So for me, that's my total decompress. That's my total go to. I will work out and just to feel a bit better, and then really meditate on some of the things that are going on, and try to focus on what's positive and what I can control versus what's happening around me. I'm sure you understand meditation well.
Yeah, I was. In fact, I was just doing some of it before the show. I am sort of a procrastinator on it. Sometimes it's recommended that we're supposed to do it early in the morning, but sometimes I just don't have the mojo to get going, and so or I get distracted by other things. I don't know what that if there's any sort of clinical diagnosis for that. Some people are like, I think you're ADD, and I'm like, I don't know, and then I'll go off and do something completely different. I start a lot of projects that I don't finish. I or
Okay.
that I table for a while, and then I'll be really hyper fixated on one thing, and then I will maybe not come back to what I started. But meditation used to be something that I did in the morning, but it's not something that I'm so focused on getting
Yeah.
done in the morning, which I wish I was. But so yeah, you like running and stuff. I think that's great. You like staying fit, and you had mentioned with the cancer survivor thing. What sort of methods did you use? Did you do it like with chemotherapy, or did you do a more holistic approach, or was it like a combination of the both?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I needed chemo, and I needed to do Western medicine. So I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which, if any of us knows, it's one of the deadliest cancers there is. And, the survival rate when I was diagnosed in 2018 was less than 8%. It was super low. A lot of people that I had been exposed to had died from it relatively quickly. I would say within a few months of getting diagnosed. And it used to be called an old man's cancer. So I was diagnosed at 33 with a pancreatic cancer. So they were really aggressive with me, which I'm going to be honest with you, I'm so thankful for, because I've seen people behind me that their doctors are not as aggressive. Their doctors are not as maybe in tune with the deadliness and terminal status that comes with it. And they've passed, sadly. And so my doctor, I was diagnosed on a Monday and I got it removed. It was in massive surgery on Friday. So it was so quick that I didn't even have a chance to. I was like, what the hell is a pancreas? So I didn't even know what that was when I jumped into it. So I didn't have time to think, and that was something, I'll be honest with you, really helped me because my doctor was like, we're not playing around. You're going to die, within 3 months if we don't get this out. And I was like, what? What do you mean die?
Whoa.
So, yeah, it was quite a rude awakening, if I'm being honest with you. And then had massive removal of my pancreas, which originally they were going to just remove, 30%. They're like, it's fine, it's not growing as fast as we thought. But when they got in there, it had almost tripled in size just from Monday to Friday. That's how crazy and fast it goes. And so they
Wow.
removed over 60% of my pancreas, my spleen, and my gallbladder all in one sitting. So it was a massive recovery coming out of such a big surgery. And then 5 years of different clinical trials and different type of chemos that I'm honestly so honored and humbled to be part of, because they're helping the generation after me, the next round of fighters that will hopefully, be able to survive it more. We're at 13% survival now, which is quite a jump from 8. And so, really, I do any clinical trial possible. So my last 2 years were a shot chemo, which destroyed me. But I have had just recently my last blood work for the first time in a year and a little almost 2 years since I've been off chemo, that I actually had no dormant, nothing, no cancer at all that's being shown. So the clinical trials work, right? And they really do help the people that are coming up behind me, and hopefully getting, FDA approved and medicine approved to give to people that desperately need it. So yeah, it was a lot. I did try holistic stuff at one point, and they thought it metastasized, and so I immediately stopped that and was like, I am not doing any of that. So Western medicine truly, saved me, and it saves a lot of people with pancreatic cancer. And even though meditation and mindfulness is what I do now every day because of it. So, the mind is so powerful. And I'm so thankful that I survived a cancer that, many people don't survive at all. So I'm so honored.
Have you ever known anybody, I don't know about that variant of cancer, but that has kicked cancer through strictly holistic methods?
I have not. And I know a lot now, a lot of people. I'm the chair of Los Angeles for PanCan, Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. So we're dealing with thousands of people every day. And I have not seen someone successfully kick it without at least aid to Western medicine. So, either be chemo, radiation, you have to think everybody has cancer. Everybody has it in our body. It's just a mutated gene, and so there's
Mhm.
something that, triggers it to propel itself forward and to multiply. And it's not even cancer, that actually kills you at the end of the day, right? It's a cold, or like I was just battling a virus that almost wiped me out because, your body has such a weakened immune system that it just really struggles with the everyday
Mhm.
life. So yeah, I have not met anybody that's fully survived off of just holistic medicine alone. And not saying it can't happen, but saying, especially with my doctor brain, there's certain methods that are proven, and it's really important for us to do those if we can. And some people choose not to because it's hard and heavy on your body, and it really does bring you right to the edge of sanity and death. So, I think it's not for everybody, but if you can do it, and if it's recommended, get 2, 3, type of diagnoses if you need, or, opinions. But it really, truly, pulled me out from something I would have been dead months into it.
That's heavy. That's really
Yeah.
heavy. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, with your, and you stay physically active,
Yeah.
do you have to, kind of take it easy, or are there any sort of other restrictions that you have to kind of place on yourself in order to keep your body in check?
Yeah, that's when I became vegan, and when I stopped eating meat was after my diagnosis and after the surgery and after I started on chemo, because my body just was not adhering well and I was getting so sick. So, I think supplements and the right food is healing, food is medicine as well, right? So we know this, especially when we're pumped full of nasty things here in the United States, right? So I think food is so important. I love food, give it all to me, but that was really helpful. And I take so many supplements that I probably put some people to shame. I probably take about 20 pills a day because my body just doesn't make things anymore, And so
Wow.
uh, being active helps. And there's sometimes where, I'll be honest with you, it's just not happening. I wake up and
Yeah.
my body's done with me for the day. And I think even just like being normal sick, like for you, you could probably rebound in a day or two, sometimes 3 days. But for somebody like me, it really knocks us out, and we have to get through like a common cold or a virus. Like I said, I just was battling, I think that sucks, because my mind was ready, but my body, ooh, it was not having me. So some days I
Yeah.
do have to take it easy. I used to run massive amounts every day pre-cancer, like 20 miles a day. I could pound out and be just happy and easy. And now I'll be honest with you, I haven't run a 20 miles since I've been diagnosed. It just is not happening. My body is
Yeah.
not having it. So I think the most I've ran is 15 miles, and I regretted every second bit of that for the next few days because my body just was torn down. It just, yeah,
Yeah.
these are not good.
With the
Yes.
veganism, you, because there's so many people that will try to say that veganism and meat-free diets are actually a detriment to your health. And I always say, so why do doctors always prescribe people with health problems? Why do they always recommend them a meatless diet? And there's this guy that's out there, this fucking asshole, Sean Baker. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a
Heard of
fucking
him? Yes.
douchebag.
Yeah.
You know who he is? Yeah,
Uh,
he's a fucking douchebag that like people will be talking about being vegan or vegetarian, and he's just sitting there with a steak and like cutting it up. And I'm like, you know, if you want to eat meat, fine. I don't think that people need it, but at the same time, like, don't be an asshole about it. Don't be a douchebag, And like, he just thrives on that. I think he's just kind of stirring the pot in order to do that, But like, why, why are people recommended vegan or meatless diets in order to reverse health effects? What about that makes it so that it will expedite your recovery?
I think there's a lot of science and research behind what specifically red meat does to your body. And I think, there's components to it which some doctors, I'm sure, feel that you could eat a red meat diet and fine, but it does have, problematics with your arteries and your blood flow. So I think one big thing, especially cancer fighters, that we commonly have is inflammation. It's something that's just huge in our bodies. It's our bodies constantly fighting things, right? So when I think about people that are told to get off of red meat specifically, yes, other meats are, the goal there, but red meat specifically, it's because it inflames our gut, which then inflames everything else. And our body is almost rejected a little bit. Now, the protein of it and, what some people are able to do is amazing. But there's also some things that clogs your heart, clogs your arteries, clog all these other things, right? Because you're not eating it in a healthy, well balanced way. And that's probably why
Right.
they there in the beginning. So similar to straight edge, I don't care what you do. If you're going to eat meat, if you're going to do drugs, you can do whatever. That's fine as long as it's not affecting me and my circle, my bubble right here. But I do think bashing others for living a lifestyle that's more clean and helpful is a bit silly, right? Because it's like, how can you choose what's healthy for another person? And I've had many critics since I've stopped eating meat specifically say, well, you need to eat meat, you need to do this. And I'm like, well, my doctor says I'm looking good. I'm looking better than I did in my 20s. when I did eat meat. So I think, blood work doesn't lie. And, certain things don't lie about that. But yeah, I think people truly forget about the inflammation factor that comes from animal products, period. I mean, even cheese also does the same thing to our guts and our bodies. And then also there's an addiction property to cheese, which I think is quite funny. Yeah, and I think that's also something that people forget about, is that there's also that part of, animal products that get into our brain and do certain things to it that maybe is not common. So I think it's interesting. Inflammation is huge in our bodies, and we're constantly trying to figure out how to get out of inflammation. So yeah, I love it, and I think, living a no meat lifestyle has really helped me in that.
That's beautiful. Yeah. You guys listening to this? You listening to this, you savages? I'm just kidding. Best vegan restaurant in LA. What is it?
Ooh, I just discovered it's called Lucky Katsu. It's kind of a newer one. So it's pretty neat. It's delicious. It's like a mix of like Asian food and Mexican food and certain other foods. And they also have like a next to it called All Vegan Franks. I'm addicted. So if I could eat the lumpia every single day there, I absolutely would. It's so good. Oh,
I was a big fan of okay, when I wanted just trash food,
yeah.
because I mean it really was. Like it was delicious, but it was
Yes.
heavily saturated in oil, was Doomies. I love me some Doomies. I ate there all the time after a hike. Like I would just be wiped out. Would just go down and get their like spicy
Yeah.
chicken sandwich, spicy fake chicken. So good, so good.
Yes.
But if I
Yes.
wanted a little bit of healthiness and a little bit of class when I was out eating, I would always hit up Crossroads. I love
Yeah.
Crossroads.
Crossroads is also good for it. There's a lot of places that aren't full vegan here that just have amazing too, like other foods that are full vegan and really delicious. So yeah, I think LA is amazing for our vegan food, and I'm sure many
Oh yeah,
people will know about Donut Friend and Magpies.
Donut Friend.
Oh,
Yeah,
delicious, right? So don't,
love
I'm
it.
surprised I'm not 500 pounds, to be honest with you.
I think I gained about probably 15 pounds from Donut Friend. Like okay, so I used to go to this Buddhist recovery group when I was in LA, and it was right down the street from Donut Friend in downtown LA, and I used to just go there and bring donuts to the meeting. And sometimes people wouldn't eat the donuts, so I would just house the donuts. And then I found myself going there every day. Like I would just make an excuse to go to Donut Friend and just like, I was just packing them
Oh,
away.
it's
And then
so
my
good.
coworkers, oh, I know, like my coworkers are making fun of me. They're like, "Oh, looks like you picked up a spare tire there." And I was like, like sorry, they're just so damn good. But
Yeah,
there's another one I like. Cafe Gratitude was a good
yeah,
one.
yeah. There's so many.
Did you read it at Moby's restaurant? I don't think it's around anymore, but it was like in Echo Park, Silver Lake area.
I don't know if he has it anymore. He's somebody I see often out in Griffith Park. He's always out there walking around causing trouble. So, yeah, I think, I don't know if he still
Causing
has
trouble.
it. Yeah, always, right? So, because people flock to him. He's, obviously,
Oh,
always causing a line in the cars to get to the parking area because he is stopped in the middle of the road because people want to talk to him. So he lives
sure.
over there. But I think, yeah, I don't think it's open anymore, but yeah, he did have something for a while. I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah. Well, I went there. Yeah, I don't remember what it was called either, but it was really good. But it had like those small portions. Like
Yeah, it's not this.
I don't. Yeah, I was like I want more food.
More,
Like I felt like
more. Yeah.
yeah, I was, please, sir, can I have some more? And it was just, it
Yes.
was, yeah, I don't know, good food. It just, yeah, I didn't feel like
Maybe
it was worth
that's
the
why they don't
price.
want you to get that tire, you know what I mean? So they feed you small because I joke and say LA is the land of vanity and greed. So constantly
Oh yeah,
checking on what we look like, right? So, and he's a more petite man too, right? So,
yeah, yeah. And he's been vegan
but
like
I
forever.
definitely do not. Yeah, yep, exactly. So he probably gets full of those tiny things, and I'm like, more, more, I'm starving.
Well, he's
Yeah.
got the access to him, so he probably just, eats as much as he wants and then gives us peasants the scraps. But
Right.
uh, so we had talked about you being a pilot, and you mentioned that your dad was a pilot with the Navy, and that you had well, there's a really cool story that you told me offline because I am super into World
Love
War
them.
II airplanes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love like the P-38 Lightning. I love the P-51 Mustang. I actually got to go when I lived in Montana. There was a B-17s, the Flying Fortresses, and I got to go and
Oh
not actually
man.
fly in one, but go and like look in the interior and stuff. Love Memphis Belle. Love Black Sheep Squadron. I
Yeah.
love all those like World War II aerial dogfight movies and stuff. And so, what I'm assuming it was your dad that kind of like inspired you to get into piloting.
Yeah, and I think there's something so open and honest about being away from everybody, right? Up so high, and I love space, and so I think anything that gets me closer, right, to not being on this earth, maybe is kind of neat and so beautiful. So,
You should have went up
that's
with Katy Perry.
oh my goodness. I wish maybe one day I'll get up to the stratosphere or above Earth, but hopefully it's not for just 11 minutes in life and blowing millions of dollars that, could be used for, I don't know, people eating. I don't know. So,
Sure. How
you
do you
know,
feel about that? Themselves astronauts, and people are like, "No, you're more like a
um,
tourist."
yeah, as someone who's actively tried to be an astronaut for many years, I think that's also become why part of becoming a pilot was important because you have to have a pilot's license to be looked at sometimes, to be an astronaut, if I'm being honest. So it's just kind of like becoming a doctor. So I became a doctor to have a good title. Now I can fly an airplane. So now, hopefully they'll look at me to go up in space and do some research. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think, who knows? Maybe this is my plug for them, and somebody sees it and goes, "Let's bring her up. Let's do it. She can go to the International Space Station for a few months." But no, I
8
think,
months.
yeah, 8 months if I'm lucky. But I
Yeah.
think, you know, that's a bit embarrassing and a bit hard for the astronauts that work really hard to get up there and actually do scientific endeavors and are really trying to do things and find life. I'm part of the Planetary Society. Here's the super nerd in me,
Saw
right?
that. Yeah.
So
Saw that.
our main thing is to just find life, and is there life, and what does it look like, and what's out there besides us. So to me, they're not astronauts, but they went on a passenger ride up above the clouds and got to see the Earth in a different light. But they didn't even hit areas where the space station is or anything like that. So
Right.
I think it's a bit, good on women power. Obviously, as a woman, I love it, but at the same time, I think it's a bit embarrassing for crews and astronaut missions to say that was it. And that's my personal opinion on it. But they blew so much money, just taking a passenger flight, and that's what the super wealthy will be able to do from here on out. And they've been doing that, to be honest with you. Blue Origin,
Yeah.
this is like the 60th flight they've done, or something to that degree, 50th something. So there's been many, many other billionaires, millionaires that have gone up. It just didn't get the same traction that it's got now.
Well, and William Shatner went up there, and somebody was saying he didn't make any sort of claim that he was an astronaut, and of all people that could probably do so, he would
Yes.
be the one, Captain
Yeah.
Kirk. But
It's our guy,
you, you
right?
know,
So
with that, do you think that that's still something that you would want to pursue? Like, are you still actively trying to be an astronaut?
I have not. They open the like application process, and it's almost like a lottery every few years. So they haven't opened
Okay.
it in a while, but I got my pilot's license in the meantime to see it. I think space is so cool. As somebody that's been part of the Planetary Society for 30 plus years, it's just something that's so awesome. And a lot of our missions have been up to, we did Light Sail 2, which was amazing, and got to a Carl Sagan's dream, which Carl Sagan thank goodness, the man, right? So, I think it would be so cool to get up to space, but I also know it's very wasteful, especially if you're a passenger and not necessarily an astronaut to go out to do scientific research. So, if they would allow me to go off and do research and actually be a prominent part of society for it, yes, that'd be super cool. But I think as a passenger, it's so wasteful, because you're
Mm.
not actually doing the things that astronauts are made to do.
Now, you had mentioned that your society is actively looking for life outside of the Earth. Is that sort of like SETI?
I think it's something. If you look at the founders of the Planetary Society, Lou Friedman's the only one that's still alive, and that was his main goal when to come to a society. It was also to they came together to kind of say screw the government, because the government wanted to stop funding going up to space, NASA as it is doing now, and there's lots of parts of NASA that are horrible, right? There's a lot of animal testing and a lot of things that are not great, but it's not necessarily looking for Martians per se, but something of living life, so organisms, those type of moments, that you can say, oh, there's something else, right, besides
Mm.
us that's out there in the galaxy. So we've done a lot of I call them like clip-on assignments with like Europa, etc., where we go on, we pay money for them, and put like a, I don't know, something into the launch where it can help dig or get, fuels back to the International Space Station so they can start looking at it. So, yeah, it's something that they've done for, we just hit our 45th year. And so that's pretty cool, but it's something that I think, just like the ocean, space is so unknown, right? So I think there's so many things that we don't actually know about space that we'll continue to glean as we do private enterprises versus like a NASA or even like a Blue Origin that's primarily for passengers, but getting up there and getting scientific stuff to help us prove that there's other things out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, okay, so I was always saying that I would love to get up and fly in a P-51 Mustang
Yeah,
or do something like that. And you're like, not me. And you had a
no.
pretty wild story about this.
Yeah, no, watching somebody go down in one, I think is the scariest thing, because you would go to shows and you go to these private airports. So I was taught how to fly at like a super airport up by Lake George, New York. So super private, super small one. They did have a comms where a lot of the small airplanes or airports don't, and I think, those, seeing a lot of the old planes. So there's a lot of World War II planes out there, private collectors that like to fly them. They have a different certification level, to be able to fly and check. And I'm not saying, and I think we know this, most pilots, especially small engine planes, it's pilot error that usually happens, or they didn't check something correctly when it goes down. So yes, I got to watch almost like a show of the amazing World War II planes go out, and we did see one engine failure, total failure, started to drop from the sky, and I was like, "This is my fear. This is like I had just started learning to fly, and it was like, this is
Oh
my
God.
exact fear, right? Of watching it, and I didn't go up in it, but one of the other students went up with the guy in it, and I was just like horrified. And he pulled it off. He corrected out of double engine failure where it all is just you could hear the siren going off on it, and ended up landing pretty hard, and ruined the plane. But I yeah, and then I had to get in to do my hours quite quickly after that, and I was like, I don't think today's my day. I think I'm gonna just sit down and watch everybody else take off, because you have to blame something for that, right? So I was like, I think the wind's too strong. I think the wind's too strong today. I'm not the pilot that was like 97 years old and probably shouldn't have been out there flying to begin with, but yeah, it horrified me. So I think I will not be going up in any old model planes. I think the earliest I've flown in is a 1970s plane. I think that's all I'm going in. That's the oldest. I
Probably a wise decision. Probably a wise decision.
No,
Did you ever see that video years ago where it was like the Italian version of the Blue Angels was flying and they were in a real tight formation and one of them made some sort of error and it clipped the wing of one of them and yeah, it was catastrophic.
they are, and I think that's the thing that jets are a totally different field, right? Because they are so fast that it's split second you can be totally out of control of what you're doing. But even in the single engine, like Cessnas are my favorite, right? So a Cessna 172 is my preferred, but those even split seconds, right, can really ruin your life. And it's
Yep.
really hard to come out of an event. I mean, few people survive plane crashes that are of that small and that magnitude just because, you're in such a close course area. So if the engine blows or if you hit something, you're not getting ejected, you know what I mean? So
Right.
thankfully, like a lot of those planes and jets, part of me, they have ejections and stuff, so they usually can survive if they don't have like a medical emergency on board. But for us single engines, it can be. I remember having vertigo, doing a figure 8 pattern, and I looked at my flight instructor and was like, "I'm getting dizzy," and he's like, look at your monitors. Do not think, do not believe your mind. The sky is not where you should be going. And so that
Right.
also is something you have to think pretty quickly on, right? Like to trust the instrument and not your mind, because it's telling you something totally different sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, trusting science and the instruments of what they're supposed to do can be so scary,
Yeah.
especially if you think like your brain's telling you the right thing when in those type of situations. And I know you talked about vertigo too and about having those moments.
Mhm.
It can be overwhelming, right? And then if you're
Yeah.
by yourself specifically, it can be very scary to try to pull out of
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah. I for the audience, I used to be involved in a group that was called the Civil Air Patrol and they went up. They started in World War II. They were a civilian auxiliary of the Air Force, and they would go and try to locate German U-boats in the
Yeah.
Atlantic. And they actually sank two of them, and they damaged like 40 of them. And so I used to go up and fly practically every weekend with this guy who was retired from the Air Force, but he had his own Cessna 182. And yeah, I used to get airsick, and I wanted to continue along that path, but I just didn't think that I would be able to. And eventually I overcame it. It's funny because recently I saw Top Gun Maverick, and there was a scene in there where one of the pilots starts blacking out and
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, I was like, he's going to die, and
Right.
Maverick has to come save him and stuff. But I can only imagine being in that situation. Fortunately, I was with a much more experienced pilot
It
and
makes me
like
too.
yeah, I was able to overcome it, but yeah, never pursued it as a career per se. But I think like you're like you've got your hands in everything. Like you're doing the doctor thing, and you're pilot in the astronomical society. So I guess what what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I think one piece of advice that I'd probably give to my younger self that I look back upon is just be because sometimes, and especially today, right? Like it's so much easier with social media to just pretend you're something else, and our mental health is really going by the wayside because people want to pretend to be something they're not. And for a long time, I, didn't tell people I was Arab American. I could pass off as a white person. So I was able to just say, oh no, I'm white, and not talk about it, not speak my language. And I think, if I look back at that young girl who, went by her Arab name and then changed it to Monica and, did these things, I tell people, period, right? Like younger self or anybody listening, and to be yourself because you are great, you are good enough, and if people don't like you, that's their problem. But as long as you're kind and respectful and a good human at heart, then that's all that matters. So be proud of who you are.
That is sage advice. That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that aren't trying to be genuine. They're trying to project this
Yeah.
image of whatever they feel that they should be. And, part
Right.
of me also thinks that, I think you should definitely aspire to be better than yourself, but at the same time, don't make such unrealistic expectations on yourself, because that's just going to kill you. It's just going to crush your spirit. You're not going to be emotionally satisfied in life. And
No.
yeah, it's disingenuous. It's not a good place to be.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, especially social media, right? We only show what we want to show. So, trying to compete with a lot of that, or when you hear people commit suicide and you're shocked because their social media looks a certain way, it's because you're constantly comparing yourself to others that are, if not
Sure.
worse, not as happy, if not worse happy, than you could be or want to be. So you nailed it, I think. So many people put too many high expectations for themselves, and goals and ambitions are amazing. You should always have them, because who knows if tomorrow will come. But, at the same time, like, don't compare yourself to somebody else. It doesn't matter, especially us women, right? We go women, but don't compare yourself to any other woman. And women should always have each other's back no matter what. And shout out to Kelly, because she's amazing from Sisterhood. She
She
always
is.
women up, and she's a huge reason why women in straight edge are successful, because she just has really put a platform for people. So my kind of girls are the girls that want to hold each other up and not push each other down.
Or if you're Katy Perry, don't compare yourself to Sally Ride or
Please
Valentina
don't.
Tereshkova.
Please
Come on
don't.
now.
Not the
Uh,
same categories.
not at all. Not at all. It's funny because I knew who Valentina Tereshkova was, but I didn't really know her story, and she was pretty hardcore,
And
like with what
she
she
was
did as
intense.
far as her flights. Yeah,
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 that's
exactly.
wild. Yeah, and back to what we were saying, like, Krishna consciousness teaches that you're not supposed to be attached to the result. So like you said, definitely have goals and ambitions, but if you fall short of those goals, well, maybe just kind of re-strategize or think, maybe what can I do differently? And if it's not something that you feel like is the path for you, it's okay to not pursue that. I've had many career shifts in my life as well, like from,
Right.
you know, like I said, military, spiritualist, and now I kind of just integrate everything that I've learned into a handful of things, and so, but Rome wasn't built in a day,
Right.
but it was destroyed pretty fucking fast. That's what my
Yeah.
dad always says. So,
Yeah.
so
Quickly. Yeah.
don't, yeah, don't like worry about, you know, getting to the finish line like right away. Like it's not a competition. It's not a race. Like just do a little bit each day, and eventually you'll get to where you want to be. But you sound like you've done all of that. I think that's amazing. I think that you're a real inspiration to me and to others out there. You've definitely accomplished a lot in your life, and I think that's so awesome. And with myself, I am in an acting and entertainment field, and so I'm always curious. And I hope you like a certain genre. I'm always curious to what people are watching, what are they
Yeah.
listening to, what are they reading. I hope you like space movies.
I think I pick them apart a bit, so it tends to be quite annoying to sit with me during a space movie, because I'm like, I couldn't do that. Why would they do that? Type of a thing. But
Yeah,
nerdily right now, I'm watching Landscape Artist of the Year, a BBC show which talks about. I'm not a painter by any means, and I think that's something I would love to do in another life, but I'm not
same.
talented. So I've been watching that because I'm envious, if I'm being honest with you, about what that looks like. And then you can always find me trying to brush up and catch up on any type of psychology and the new type of diagnosis counts that are coming out, or any type of brain pattern waves and those type of books. So I definitely don't like things that are maybe not fact or fiction, that are more of a pretend, if you will. And so I catch myself going towards, how do I keep up with my education and helping others around me. So all my books are nerd, scholarly books that are peer reviewed, all the lame stuff, right? Nobody wants to read crap. So
You said you were a bigger nerd than me, but I don't think so. Nobody out
listen,
nerds
I
me.
think we
Like I
could
said.
compete. I think we could compete with it. I think maybe if we had
Okay.
a boy and girl one, maybe we could go that way for biggest
Let's go.
nerd.
Let's go. There you go. So you read a lot of stuff with your studies and whatnot. What are you listening to music wise?
Oh my gosh, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in the 90s and 2000s. I wish I
Same.
could get on the music, nowadays. I'm horrible for it, but I am a 90s R&B rap girl too. So I think, especially coming back home to California, that I haven't been in for a few months. I was in Philly for a year. Yeah, I was just listening to Tupac today. So I think, there's those type of things. But yeah, you will always find me in a rotation of Earth Crisis, Tupac, and any type of Sade. I think those type of musics always get me through. And even the Starting Line, it's my favorite band of all time. So some pop punk is good, but sadly I wish I was more in tune with the times on music, but those are my go-tos.
Do you remember when Tupac was shot and then like God, days later they dropped the Machiavelli album? Like all of us kids were like, "What? Like, how does he
What
have a new
happened?
album? This is crazy." Yeah,
Why?
yeah. I
Exactly.
was like, "What?" Yeah, like blew our minds. We're like, "He's speaking to us from the dead." It was so
Right.
crazy, But,
Right. How did he
um,
do this? Not realizing
eh,
that it was already completed before his death.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Uh, wh- uh, Back to what you were saying about space movies, though. What do you
Yeah.
feel like's the most true to life, true to science space movie that's out there?
Shucks. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what I would say is
I
something
heard
that
Interstellar's pretty close.
there's parts of Interstellar that are right on, right? That are pretty good. That, yes, I can see it, but there's other parts where, I catch myself eye rolling, in the midst of it. And I haven't watched it in a little while, but yeah, okay, that's a good one. We'll go with that one. We'll go with Interstellar. There's
Okay.
parts that are very true that, would happen, and hopefully don't happen. And we're more in tune with, we're going to be, I think we're putting people on Mars in the next 5 to 10 years. So, we'll
How would
see.
that happen, though? I was thinking about that the other
Yeah.
day because I happen to like the movie The Martian a lot. And I'm like, okay, they're talking about sending manned space flights to Mars.
Yeah.
But given the fact that, that woman astronaut was up there, please forgive me, I don't remember her name, but she was up there for 8 months. And they said she was essentially dying because you don't, the stressors of space are so much so that your body doesn't function the same way that it does on the earth. So how would we be able to send people to Mars, because it takes a long time to get to Mars unless you got warp
It's
speed
a
like in
one-way
Star
trip.
Trek.
Yeah, it's a one-way trip. You're not coming back, kind of a thing. But they got to build ecosystems, and that's something that I know that they did this huge call out for, like, I think 10 people were picked, and they've been training in different environments for the last 5, 6 years. And
Oh,
so
cool.
they have to build like ecosystems, obviously, over there because it's the closest planet, that has the same type of atmosphere that we do. So yeah, I think that would need to even happen. Like I said, it's a one-way ticket. So I don't know. And we might not even know, right? The lag time of getting that back would be horrible. We wouldn't find out for minutes to hours if, something catastrophic happened because the
Oh,
lag,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah. It would take a long time to communicate. That's like in 2001 where Dave Bowman would be talking to his parents, and it said it was like I can't remember, it was like a 14-minute
yeah, super
delay or
lag.
something, and they had to, whenever Dave and uh, whenever Dave and Frank were talking to the news station, they said it's been trimmed because we couldn't
Right.
communicate like in real time, you know. So yeah, that's something to consider too. And like fuel, like how are you going to
Yeah,
get there?
so
Like
much.
I don't think we have the systems to do that yet, do we?
No, I think we know how to get there. We know what it takes because we've done multiple Mars missions, right? So I
Hmm.
think we know how to get there. We know what it takes to get there. I think people signed up willingly for a one-way ride to Mars, which kind of talks to the living conditions here on Earth, I guess. But I think it would be, assuming like any scientific measure, the first couple times are usually catastrophic and not very well planned out, and you learn a lot, right? So
Sure.
I would hate to say we might lose quite a few people that want to go over there until we really know, what Mars is and how to live in it with the ecosystem and what to build and what type of environment's needed because it's hot. So lots of stuff, right, to figure
Yeah.
out.
If you had the opportunity to go, would you?
Maybe on the fifth mission, maybe if there was quite a few people ahead of me that I got to watch, either survive or not
Be like that
survive.
air show incident.
Exactly. Sometimes sometimes it's good not to be an early adapter. So I
Yes.
think I probably would watch, and then I ultimately would like to come home. So if that would ever be a thing, or if you just become a Martian, right, for forever. So yeah, maybe. And I think outside of my lifespan, they'll get to that point. But who knows? Maybe in the next 40 to 50 years that they'll probably willingly shoot my ass to Mars to get rid of me on Earth. So we'll see, right? Let's give it 40 or 50 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anybody you want to shout out aside
No,
from Kelly and the Sisterhood crew?
I think everybody is amazing. I've watched a lot of the older podcasts, and I get to see some of my favorite people like Greg. And I think there's some really cool people. So hopefully, hello to everybody that's watching and knows me. I appreciate you. I love you. And yeah, just excited. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love being able to talk to people that have an interesting tapestry that is their lives. I think it's great, and I think you're continuing to do great things. I'm really interested to hear more about the space society that you're involved in. So we'll chat a little bit more. But I want to
Yeah.
thank everybody for coming to the show. Oh, and Kelly said, "Oh my gosh, I'm blushing."
I
Uh,
love you, Kelly. I love you.
yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming to the show. If you like the show, you can also give super chats. I forgot to mention that at the top of the hour. If you want to give a small little donation to the show, that would be most appreciated. It's a one-man enterprise. I run everything. I do everything. So I'd like to be able to expand and do more things. So if you're so gracious enough and you want to give a donation, that would be great. We also have merchandise, though. You can go on over to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off the entire order. I think you'll really like the shirts. We got a few hardcore bands up there, and I've got a lot of movie designs because I like movies. So I hope you like them too. They're all artist inspired, and they feel amazing. They're really soft. A lot of people like them. I like them. My mom likes them. So I think you'll like them. But yeah, and like I said, like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on Apple, give us a follow, give us a rating. That would be most excellent. Again, namaste, everybody. God bless. Be good. Thank you, Dr. Monica Tanner.
Thanks so much. Good to see you.